Hello everyone, my name is Jarek Wilkiewicz. Welcome to YouTube Developers Live. We have an exciting show for you today. In the studio, let me introduce our guests. Hannah Eaves from LinkTV. How are you doing, Hannah?
I'm very well, thank you.
How was your vacation?
It was awesome.
Did you go somewhere exciting?
I did. I went to Greece and Turkey and I'm feeling very mellow and relaxed.
Oh, great frame of mind for this show. We have Darin Wilson. How are you, Darin?
Good, thank you very much.
I hear you were driving down from the wine country today for the show?
Petaluma, yes.
All right. Well, I really appreciate that. I know it's hard to get out of the wine country to Silicon Valley, but we are hopefully going to make it worth your trip today.
For you guys, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you for saying that. Jeremy Wilson, my famous co-host.
Hello.
How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing pretty well.
I heard you got a lot of sleep last night.
I got a lot, yes.
Which is about 6 hours, right?
Yes, 6 hours broken up.
That's good. I think you look a lot better than usually. So
Yeah, the
this is
caffeine's keeping me alive.
And then live from New York, Jeremy Posnick. How are you doing, Jeremy? Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'll take Jeremy's identity. I'm happy, but hey everybody.
I am slightly jet lagged, I must admit. I just got back from South Korea about 24 hours ago, so you're going to have to forgive me when I mix up your names. Okay, so let's get into it. We will talk about LinkTV. So for those of you that are not familiar with it, we'll give you a great introduction. We're planning a little demo, and then we'll drill into the technical aspects of their integration with YouTube and YouTube APIs. And then towards the end of the show, Jeff is going to tell us a little bit more what's happening in the Stack Overflow space, because we've been getting a lot of high quality questions, so we thought that might be a good idea to cover some of them live on the show. And then, as always, if you have any questions about what we are covering today, please ask them using the moderator link that is in the YouTube embed. So let's start with you, Hannah. So tell me about LinkTV.
Well, LinkTV is an independent, non-profit national television channel on Dish and DirecTV in about 33 million US households. It was founded in 1999 by a group of independent television producers who wanted an opportunity to try and bring international programming to American audiences. So particularly news, documentaries, world cinema, international music. So basically kind of different perspectives to American audiences. And for instance, we were one of the first broadcasters of Al Jazeera English. We were actually the first national broadcaster of Al Jazeera English in America, which I think was very important at a time kind of post-September 11th. And we got a lot of attention for our kind of bringing international perspectives to American audiences.
I can totally relate to that as somebody with immigrant background. So is it IPTV station? Is it terrestrial broadcast? Tell me a little bit more about the distribution.
So it is on Dish and DirecTV in the basic packages, so satellite, and also in some local cable areas in smaller chunks of programming. But also we recently announced that we'll be merging with KCET in Los Angeles, and they have I think a little over 5 million cable households in the Los Angeles area, and pretty soon you'll be seeing more of our programming in LA, I think. And then on top of that, you know, over the last 5 years, we've been moving a lot into the digital world. So part of what I'm going to be demoing today is a move we made into the iPad, and also we have a corresponding website and Google TV app. So we're definitely moving as much as we can into also digital delivery.
And then can you give us a little sense of your size as it relates to independent broadcasters? Are you kind of in the middle? Are you a large one? Are you a small one? For those that are not very familiar with the scale.
We're a large, especially when you add KCET into the mix, we're a very large for being an independent television channel. Yeah.
Great. So for some of our audience who have been following our blog, they have read about viewchange.org, which is something that we blogged about probably a little over a year ago. What's the relationship between viewchange.org and LinkTV?
Well, viewchange.org was a project of LinkTV. We received funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to build a video website that focused and brought together hundreds of videos about global development and progress being made in the developing world. And so it was for that project that we developed a kind of new suite of technologies, and part of that was integrating the YouTube API, and also doing natural language processing on the metadata around the video in order to do intelligent search to bring up related content from around the web that was relevant to the video you were watching. And also that meant that we could create kind of an archive of 450 high quality videos and also connect them to the latest news, the latest videos, so down the road the content kind of remained relevant. So that was kind of our first step into this new video technology. And then we received funding from the Bertha Foundation, which is a great London-based foundation, to take that same technology and apply it to global news videos. And in between there, we got funding from the Knight Foundation to basically build a prototype of this new global news video system online and do research with 16 to 24-year-olds about their news habits. So this has kind of been an ongoing process for us.
I see. Great. And then for those of you that have been following, you might have noticed that actually viewchange.org has open sourced the implementation, right? So if somebody wants to take a stab at it, deploy their own, they could actually get the source code and play around with it.
Yeah,
right?
it's on GitHub. It's called the LinkTV platform. That is kind of prior to a lot of the changes we've made to support this new global news site. But yes, kind of the core architecture is there up on GitHub.
Great. And then you also won the Peabody Award, right? Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so that was after September 11th, Link kind of thought about what was missing from American broadcasting, and part of that was perspectives from the Middle East. So we started this show called Mosaic, World News from the Middle East, where we monitor about 40 different Middle Eastern broadcasters every night. And then we take 10 to 15 segments of those, translate them into English, do English language voiceovers, and then package them together into a nightly half-hour news program. And so we won a Peabody for that show. Because it was such a kind of a unique way of bringing, what is the Iranian state television saying about something that's happening in Iran, instead of just what is America thinking about that, as well as, what's Al Jazeera Arabic saying, on the ground in the Middle East.
Yeah, and this is very important in my experience. Obviously, the perspective makes a huge difference.
Yes.
So how does LinkTV get their content? You mentioned that for the Middle East coverage, you obtain content, you repackage it. Can you tell us more about where does the content come from?
Yeah, I mean, we go to international festivals, we have relationships with international distributors, and so, we hand select specific documentaries, I think, that don't get a lot of airplay in the US. Also, occasionally we stumble across some great international show, like we have a Danish show called Borgen right now, which has been a huge success for us. I mean, we've got a double page spread in Newsweek, everyone loves it. It won the BAFTA in the UK for its airing on BBC, but no one in America is showing it. So we have kind of relationships with certain distributors, and we pick up programming that way. So that you'll see in the app, we have a whole documentary section that's all acquired content. And then we create shows like Mosaic. We also have another program called Link Asia, which is a weekly news program where we have correspondents on the ground in certain Asian cities. And then we have them report on stories that might not make it to America. They look at what's breaking in social networks in China, translate that out of Chinese, and look at stories from those perspectives. So it's kind of mostly acquired content from distributors and also international news broadcasters, and also a little bit of original production.
And I was told that you also curate content from YouTube. Is that true?
Yes, we do. We curate, I'd say, you'll see when we demo the app, probably about 80% of the content in the app is curated from YouTube.
Cool. So maybe we should switch and look at the app a little bit, and then drill into some of the technical aspects, because I know Jeremy is jumping up and down, ready to ask some questions of Darin.
Yeah, I'm ready to get started with some of those.
Okay, so I'll jump on the iPad over here.
app.
Let's take a look at this. Need to get back on here. All right, might take a minute to load up. So here we have, this is the LinkTV World News iPad app. You can download this now. It's now available through the App Store. If you just search for LinkTV, it'll come up. So what you see here is kind of a pretty standard presentation. What we wanted to take how we curate global news for the television channel and apply it to this app. So you can see we have a variety of sources here from AP, Euronews, Al Jazeera English, ITN. We try and curate as much as we can Press TV, Current TV, off of YouTube, and then we're also, like I said, doing some of this translation from Arabic and also Asian language news sources that we put up. And this is a mix of kind of international stories that you might not have seen covered so much in the US media, and also raw video. So we do a lot of like trying to find like what is the best, most important eyewitness videos you can see out of, for instance, the Gaza conflict or something like
Is
that.
raw video a technical concept, or is that a journalistic concept?
Just a journalistic concept.
When
It just means that
hear
it's
raw video, I think in terms of the bytes and the bits.
oh, right. No. It's just that it's unedited, so
I
it's
see.
not edited. It's not wrapped up in a broadcast, which I
Got
think
it.
is really
So it's like
appealed.
user-generated content might fall into that category.
Citizen journalism?
Uh-huh.
Yes, definitely. So we were trying to find, the best pieces of eyewitness accounts. So if I pick a video here, here's Obama's recent trip to Myanmar. And so you can see here when we go into a video, this is where the natural language processing is happening.
How
This
so?
is a
Can you
Telegraph
explain how that
TV
works?
piece. Sure. So we partner with Zamanta.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you're familiar with them. And they do the natural language processing on the title and the metadata that we're pulling from YouTube in this case, from Telegraph TV's YouTube channel. And then they feed back to us what people, places, organizations, topics are covered within the video. So this is something I know that you guys have started integrating, but this was,
So it's similar to what Freebase Topics API does, right?
Yes,
now, or YouTube
exactly.
API.
So except we built this 2 years ago.
Sure.
So
That's why you're here.
and so as you guys are doing, we tie these to Freebase IDs. So you can see underneath the video here, if you're not familiar with the people or places covered in the video, you can kind of tab through these tabs down here and get background information about everything that's covered in the video, and that's all automated. And this information is being pulled from Freebase, and if there's no Freebase record, then we use DBpedia. So we kind of have a fallback, and then you can follow any of these topics, and I'll show you that feature in just a second. That means that anytime something new comes up about, that's relevant to what you're following, it'll come up in the My Link section. And then we also use that same system to kind of call up related videos from elsewhere on the web, and related articles as well. I'm not sure why we're not. Let's take a look at another video here. We should be seeing some related articles as well down here. So here you see we have related articles, and we have thousands of sources that we're scraping to bring up related articles. We're using Daylife for that, as well as Zamanta as well. And so if there is an article, like here's a Globe and Mail article that I'm interested in reading that's about the same thing that's covered in the video, it brings up the whole Globe and Mail website. So you don't have to leave the app. You can dig deeper, as you can learn more about a topic. You can then go in and read some articles about what's covered in the video without ever having to leave the app. So we also have this feature called what we call in-depth. Sorry, I keep on accidentally updating here. Here we go. So here's an in-depth feature. So this is where we pull together a playlist. We might have curated 30 videos about the Gaza conflict. And here's a place where you can look at that playlist and watch all of those videos back to back. And then also on this page, we curate in key tweets and articles and ways you can take action, although we're having trouble loading this page right now.
So while we're loading, I had a question about, how do you actually decide what to show to a particular user? So when I fire up the app, I get a view of the content that you have curated. Is there any personalization capability? Can I pick topics that I care about, or news sources that I care about?
Yep, you can pick topics that you care about. Here we go. You can follow news stories, and I'm going to jump right into that here. So you can see the story page. I think what's interesting about this in-depth feature is also, and all the pages we try to do this, there's an action that you can take.
Okay.
So on some pieces it might be donating, if it's something about women's rights, it might be, send a child to school, send a care package, something like that. Here it's learn more about the Israeli-Hamas conflict. So you can see here's the playlist of 38 videos. You can watch those back to back. You can see key tweets. I think this was really good for us on election night. It's really like a live blogging kind of platform.
And how do you know what actions to associate with which topics?
That's the one piece that's not automated in our whole system. So it really is a matter of like researching, you know, what topic, and it's, you know, we've had a long history of trying to associate action with content. So it's just kind of calling on that institutional knowledge to go back. And we've also have a lot of partners that we've done programs with, like Save the Children and Oxfam and places like that.
Cool.
So here is the much talked about My Link personalization page. So if you reach this page and you're not following anything yet, like I said before, I showed you could follow topics. We suggest things that you might be wanting to follow. So here we have a few different pieces you might want to follow: the Syrian civil war, anti-austerity protests. You might want to follow sources: Al Jazeera English, Link Asia. And so now if I, let's see, I'm going to follow, oh, David Petraeus, oh dear. You might not want to follow self-immolation. That's a bit of a hardcore topic there. So now if I refresh this page, you can see how we then display all of the latest content for all the things you're following, as well as pulling out specific videos if there have been any in the last 5 days. We pull those out to the forefront. And so now there's all this content that is being kind of curated based on your interests. And we also have a documentaries section. So here, you know, like for instance, Crisis is a great documentary. We have a selection of documentaries. You can see here we have some Vice guides. So we partnered with Vice and acquired some content from them. I know that there's also a lot of Vice content up on YouTube, and other feature-length documentaries. And you can see here, this is a good example of the way you can take an action. You can donate to help better the lives of India's poor on this page specifically. And there's one last thing I'm going to show you, which is we build a map feature as well. I think that it's really important for us as a global, globally focused news app for you to be able to really look deeply into specific regions.
Really cool. So what do the square, what do they represent?
Pardon?
The squares on the map, what do
they represent where there are videos. So I'm just, and here we go, you can go last 24 hours, last week, or last month. And I think that you can see, we'll go a little, zoom in a little bit here, and you'll be able to see, for instance, how we can break out areas specifically in places like Syria, where you could see Aleppo versus Damascus. It's taking a little while because of last month we've added that, you know, we had hundreds of videos now. We have an editorial staff running 24/7. We have, you know, staff based in different cities, and so we're adding. So the videos are
geo-coded when you upload them for your content, and then for YouTube you're using the geo-location-based search?
No, right now we're doing everything manually. So
they're curated, since I think there's still a lot of videos on YouTube that don't actually have the tags.
Yeah.
I see.
It's taking a second to load here. Here we go. Look at all those squares. So if I zoom in here, say for instance to Syria, you can see, you know, a little drawer comes out. If I tap on Syria, we have, you know, 10 videos here, but then we also have, do this from the side. It's a little tricky. Much more granular. So we have Aleppo, areas I can't pronounce, sadly. We need our Arabic team here to pronounce everything for us. But I think you get a good idea of kind of the depth of international content we're curating in here from, you know, all over the world.
This is really cool.
Yeah.
I see you have something in Poland as well.
Oh. Do we? Or no?
Oh, in the neighborhood.
Sadly.
So that's pretty cool. That's pretty fun.
I should have had them add something just before we did this.
All right. Well, this is great. Thank you so much for running the demo for us.
Thank you.
It's a very, very interesting app, and I understand the app has been quite successful in
the
store since you guys released it.
Yeah. When they launched, we were #1 in the news category and number 25 overall. And I think we've been able to kind of maintain a fairly good rate of organic kind of downloads. So yeah, and we've gotten a lot of really great comments and ratings. You know, we have, I think we're like this close to having 5 stars. It's like 4 stars and 7/8 of a
Okay,
fixed
great.
star.
Maybe the audience of our show will check out this app.
Yeah,
and contribute some of
exactly.
the good ratings.
Please
especially-
do, please do.
Especially given that this is all very nice and easy to use, but when you look under the hood, there's actually some heavy lifting going on with the semantic analysis and the
Yep.
geo information.
Yep.
So it's very nicely done.
Yep.
So let's switch to the technical part. I understand Darin is here, and he's a developer at LinkTV.
Yeah.
So Darin, tell us more about the implementation.
Well, I also want to say hello to my partner Chuck, who's in the peanut gallery there.
Yeah.
The two of us did all the development, at least on the front end of the app. The nice thing about it is when we started, the news site was already up and running, so we had a back end in place that we could build off of. And the CMS that the editors used to input videos and edit things was already in place. They didn't have to learn anything new. Some new features like the in-depth feature that Hannah just showed was brand new, so we had to build out some back end then, but we had a good solid base to start with.
So what languages, I'm always curious, what languages did you use and why did you go that route?
Well, the back end was written in Rails, and that was, I inherited that. I just started at Link about a year ago. But I was coming from a Rails shop, so that felt pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
For the front end, we sort of went back and forth of whether we were going to do native or do something using HTML5 like PhoneGap or one of those technologies. And we did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people, and the kind of the overall feeling we got was to get the best and smoothest experience performance-wise, you're going to be better off going native. The HTML5, at least a year ago, wasn't quite there yet in terms of smoothness and speed. And so we decided just to dive right in and implement it native. So we used the standard iOS framework in Objective-C for the client, and then communicated. We added a kind of a REST-like API for the back end that was just for the iPad app. But also, Hannah didn't mention this, but we also released a Google TV app about the same time that the iPad app launched, so we were able to use the REST API for that as well.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about how you use the YouTube APIs?
A few different ways. First off, the website, news.linktv.org, uses Chromeless Player for displaying the YouTube content there. We also use the data API in the back end. So when an admin finds a video on YouTube that they like and they want to add to the site, they just drop a URL in, and then the data API runs and fetches all the metadata. So they don't have to copy over the description or the duration or the title or any of that. That works very nicely. And then in the front end, the actual video window that you see is the iOS web view, and we're using the embed player API,
Okay.
the iframe.
Great. Do you have any, was there anything that surprised you as you were integrating maybe with the player API or even the data API?
Yeah, well, I think the first surprise was, we thought, okay, how do you drop YouTube video into an iOS app? Well, there's got to be an Objective-C control for that. And then we kind of looked around and said, oh, because we knew there was a YouTube app, so we thought, I'll just use whatever they're using. But it turns out, no, you just drop a little web view in there and use the same technology used for the website. So that was kind of a surprise. But there was some nice sample code to start with. And I was talking to Chuck right before we started, and he dropped it in about half a day, and it was working pretty quickly. It's always nice when you see some sample code and you drop it in and it works the first time. Very often you get a surprise, usually, sometimes a bad one. There's some little strange bug, or the sample code was posted 2 years ago and it's not the same, but the documentation was nice and up to date, so it worked the first time, and then we just kind of refined it from there.
Okay, great. So I'm guessing, do you have, from feedback, you're saying it sounds like you're hoping for an iOS native app. Is there anything else that comes to mind when you're integrating? Maybe just for general feedback, we always like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously if there were a native iOS control that did YouTube, that would be, that's sort of the pie in the sky dream. But even then, I think it would be nice just to see more code samples of iOS integration, particularly the the piece we stumbled on a little bit, which took a little research to figure out, was communication between the video player and the native app. Because we wanted to do some things, first of all, with analytics, to know how long someone played a video, like when they paused it, when they left. And we also wanted to make the launch a little bit smoother. So we've got these nice Reuters images that we use for the videos. And we wanted that image to be up there while the video was loading. And getting the message back from the player that it was not only ready and not only queued, but actually playing, took a little bit of research and a little bit of experimentation to find out. So,
So Darin, to that point, sounds like you are using the iframe embed in the UI web view, and then the JavaScript iframe API to actually kick off the video playback. Since I've noticed you have your own control, the player button is uniform across all the different types of content, right? And then in addition, you said you have been able to track the communications between the iframe state machine and in your app, right? So how is that piece done?
That was another surprise. We researched a lot to see, how are people doing this, and it turned out the kind of prevailing method was for JavaScript to fire off a location change. So setting window.location to something else, because that is actually an event that the iOS web view tracks. It's one of the few that will do that.
Cool.
And
so this is like the smoke signal equivalent of the motor age, because it's kind of low tech.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you fire off the location change, and then so we just created these. They're not really URLs; they're just kind of messages.
Yeah, I call
They're
that it's a first world problem.
Right. Exactly. And so we catch that, and then based on the event, we look at it and say, okay, it looks like it's been paused, or it looks like it's been playing. So let's do something, in response to that. And then to go the other direction, there's the iOS web view has a call that will let you just execute JavaScript at that level.
So this is how you can call the JavaScript API method from the Objective-C code.
Yeah, which at this point we're not doing anymore, but one rev we were doing that. So that's how we handled the bidirectional communication. So it was a little chunky, but and sort of surprising once we saw the method, but once we tried it, it worked.
Yeah, it seems to work pretty nice in your app.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. So have you guys had a chance to try the new data API or the new analytics API?
No, we haven't put that in. We've been so focused on the iPad app that we haven't looked at the back-end stuff. Particularly, there's a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
All that was working fine. But I saw your show a few weeks ago about when Sean Sinister was here, showing off the Freebase connection. And that would be great because, as Hannah mentioned, we rolled all that stuff ourselves. So if there's a way to leverage what we're already doing with communicating with the data API to get more of the top information back, that would, we could cut out a bunch of code and not have to maintain it anymore.
And Darin is a Freebase alum as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's I worked at MetaWeb
wow.
years ago at the very beginning when Freebase was just a twinkle in Danny Hillis's eye. And worked on the first version of it. And so a lot of those guys I know after the Google acquisition happened. So it's kind of fun because it was this thing I worked on years ago and kind of thought how this might get used, and we wondered about it. And then when Google picked it up, it got more widespread, and now I'm using it as a client in my own package, and not something I ever would have imagined. But
so you probably won't be complaining too much if it doesn't work as well as you think it should.
Well, if it does, I know who to call. One of my friends will get an email.
Okay. Well, we're very excited about the Topics API. I think so far the feedback has been very encouraging.
Yeah,
so
it's
we're
great.
really looking forward for developers to adopt it. And Jeff has put up a really nice code samples around it as well.
Yep. It's really nice. When you do a search, you can add a topics ID, and it helps kind of make that search much better.
That was actually the thing we talked about, at the very beginning. It's like if someone types BASS into a search engine, how do we know if it's a musical instrument, the fish, or a beer? Because back then you couldn't really do that. My voice is squeaking. I'm Peter Brady all of a sudden, excuse me. Must be the early hour. So now we're really seeing that happen in action, and it's terrific.
Well, great.
Yeah, I forgot to mention just another piece of us taking the YouTube content is that and I think a lot of people, as they start thinking about how to build apps around YouTube content, we spend a lot of time thinking about how do we package YouTube content so it's more attractive to the user on the front end experience, which is why we have a subscription to Reuters Images, and we also have some fantastic headline writers. So we try and give more context to the YouTube videos through using the metadata, but then we also try and wrap it in a pretty package, with choosing really striking imagery and catchy headlines, and also headlines that might tell you a little bit more about what's going on in the larger frame.
Rather than like video 001.mp3.
Yeah, exactly. We don't see too many of those, but we definitely do with the raw video. Yeah, for
Got
sure.
it. I think I'm slowly getting the raw video concept.
Well, in all the research we did both a national survey and we did a lot of market research, and also, like I said, this white paper we did with 16 to 24-year-olds about their news habits.
Yeah, I saw that. It's
raw
It's
videos.
available on your site, right?
Yeah. News.linktv.org, that's the website version of the app.
Yeah, and I think
/
anybody
white
who
paper.
is interested in user-generated content, or as you call it, citizen journalism, I think it's a very interesting read.
Yeah, I mean, raw video, just the interest in raw video amongst young people is enormous. I mean, I think that you guys know this at YouTube, when something breaks, everyone's really looking for the eyewitness kind of accounts. And then people also then want to step back and understand the larger context. But I think in the moment, raw video is of such interest, and there's a lot of distrust towards produced news content from broadcasters. A lot of pretty sophisticated media understanding, I think, from young people, which was surprising to us.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the surprising finds that I saw in the paper as well. Great. So, Jeremy, do you have any other tricky questions for Darin?
No, I think we can just close with, and by the way, thanks for sharing all this. Do you have any feedback you'd like to give to developers who's starting maybe their own integrations with the YouTube APIs, whether it's a player or the data API?
No, nothing too much beyond definitely start with the sample code, because that's going to get you 90% of the way. And then make sure, review. I just learned a couple things about the API this morning from Yarek when we were talking before. So, go over the documentation with a fine-tooth comb, because there's some things in there that'll surprise you and help you.
Yeah. Great.
Well, so
kick it over to Jeff, I guess.
yeah, thanks a lot for sharing all your experience. And then we have a few minutes left. So I know Jeff wanted to tell us a little bit more about what's happening in the Stack Overflow space. Jeff, any interesting questions that came up recently?
Sure. Well, I'm a little biased. I think all the questions are interesting, but there was one in particular I wanted to highlight that we got from a developer recently, and this actually points a little bit to a deficiency in our sample code. Thanks for that very interesting talk, and I certainly appreciate the fact that we do need to have good samples out there, because that's what developers are building on. So the one question I wanted to highlight, I'm going to actually start screen sharing right now, so you will not be able to see me anymore, but I wanted to pull up the question. This is about how you can like a specific video using version 3 of the API, which is the new version we released a few weeks ago. And if you read through the question, and by the way, there's a link to the specific question posted on our Plus YouTube Dev Google Plus page right now, if you wanted to go back later. But basically, if you look through what the developer was initially doing, they were trying to insert an activity, basically, and that's a very natural thing to expect yourself to be able to do, because you can actually read the activity feed and you can get information about the videos that have been liked from there. So, it kind of logically makes sense. Well, why can't I just post something to that activity feed and add liking of it via that mechanism? Unfortunately, though, that's not actually how things are done. So I wanted to explain what I put into the answers to that question. And basically, this ties into how we treat pretty much everything in version 3 of the API as a playlist. So things that kind of in version 2 had their own standalone endpoints, the favorites feed, for instance, or the, I guess there wasn't even liked videos feed in version 2, but there's a separate endpoint for liking a video. Kind of watch later was also kind of treated as something special. those are more or less kind of coalesced into the general idea of a playlist in version 3 of the API. And that does simplify some things. It means that you don't have to kind of write special purpose code for liking a video or adding a video as a favorite. It's all pretty much the same operation, but you pass in a different playlist ID. So the basic way you'll want to do this is by first making an authenticated call to channels list, which is something that gives information about your channel. And you can pass in the parameter mine equals true, and you'll get information back about your specific channel. And you'll get back this list over here if you specify part equals content details. And this contains the specific IDs that correspond to your own likes playlist and favorites playlist, also the uploads, watch later, and watch history playlists. And all of those playlists can be read from if you do a standard playlist items .list, and some of them can be kind of do write operations and add new videos to it. So the way you do the like operation, getting back to the initial question, is that you take the ID that you get back from your channels list call, and just kind of implementation detail. Right now, at least, they're all prefixed with LL for the likes playlist and FL for the favorites playlist. Please don't hard code that. It's much better to do what we're recommending here, which is try to retrieve this playlist ID dynamically, just in case we ever change anything in the future. Hard coded logic is a great way to run into problems down the line. So get this liked playlist ID, and then you can do a standard playlist items insert. Here's a sample of the body that you would do. In this case, you pass in the playlist ID, and you pass in the video ID. And it's, again, very similar to how you would do the favorites insert if you want to favorite a video, if you want to add a video to any arbitrary playlist. So hopefully that simplifies things for a developer moving forward. We don't have part of the problem, and go back to what I was saying about sample code, is that there's no code sample for this right now in the docs. So as part of answering this question, I also submitted a code sample that should hopefully show up pretty soon within our inline code samples in the docs. So if you're somewhere down the line and looking for similar code, you should be able to find it pretty easily. So that's the main thing I wanted to point out. There are a bunch of other interesting questions in Stack Overflow, but we'll save some more for next week.
Cool. Thanks for covering that, Jeff. I think the moral of the story is that the world is nothing but a playlist.
There you go. Playlists everywhere.
All right. So I think we have just a little bit of time left to look at the questions. I see one question that is relevant. I think this one is addressed to you, Jeremy. Is YouTube Google Developer Relations hiring?
Yes, we are. We're always hiring. Go check it out at developers.google.com/jobs, and feel free to apply. We're always looking for help. And I think that's the only question, actually. So yeah, so if you're interested, definitely go check out that page, read a little bit about it. We'd love to hear from you, so definitely apply.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show today, Darin and Hannah. Jeff, thanks for joining from New York City. And
Absolutely.
As always, pleasure to have you on the show co-hosting Jeremy.
Thank you.
And I guess we'll see you next week.
Oh, I'll be in Brazil.
That's true, we won't see you, but Jeff, I think you are on mute.
I think
Okay.
Jeff will be.
Okay, you're no longer on mute.
Yeah. I think I'll be flying solo next week, so
Okay,
yeah.
great. All right, until the next week then.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.